Witness the shocking moment when Clint Eastwood stands up for an elderly veteran who gets disrespected at a luxury restaurant. The legendary actor and director is known for his tough guy persona, but even he was moved to action when he saw a veteran being treated poorly by the restaurant staff. Watch as Clint Eastwood takes a stand and teaches everyone a lesson in respect and gratitude. You won't believe what happens next. Before we move forward, please subscribe my channel for more interesting stories. It happened on a cold evening at one of the most expensive restaurants in Los Angeles. The kind where the valet opens your door before your foot even touches the ground. Inside, the lights were soft, the wine was flowing, and the elite chatted over filet mignon and overpriced truffles. But what no one expected, what stopped the room cold, was the sight of an elderly man in a faded military jacket quietly entering the restaurant, only to be met with rolled eyes, sneers, and whispers. Until Clint Eastwood stood up. The next few minutes would change the atmosphere completely and teach everyone in that room what true respect really looks like. Let me tell you exactly what happened. Clint Eastwood wasn't there to make a scene. He just wanted a quiet dinner with a close friend, something rare in his busy life as a legendary actor and director. Known for his no-nonsense attitude, gritty on-screen characters, and old-school values, Clint didn't expect the night to be anything out of the ordinary. The restaurant was sleek, upscale, and exclusive. Everyone there seemed to fit a certain mold-polished, wealthy, and well-dressed. That's why, when the elderly man walked in, his posture slightly hunched, wearing an old army green jacket and boots worn from time, it was as if the entire room flinched. Some guests stared. A waiter hesitated. The hostess offered a tight smile that barely masked her discomfort. But Clint leaned forward, curious, because he saw something the others didn't. This wasn't just a scruffy old man interrupting the ambiance. This was a veteran. A man who had clearly lived through things most people in that room couldn't even imagine. And when that man was met with disrespect, Clint Eastwood knew he couldn't sit back. The elderly man stood at the hostess desk, clearly trying to explain something. His voice wasn't loud, but there was a tremble to it, like someone who's had to ask for permission one too many times in life. He clutched a small, folded piece of paper, and from Clint's angle, it looked like a reservation slip. But the hostess was shaking her head. "We have a dress code, sir," she said, her tone more impatient than professional. "This establishment expects a certain presentation." The man responded softly, "I've been coming here for years. My son made the reservation for my birthday." Clint could feel the energy shift in the room. Conversations quieted. Silverware clinked less frequently. Some patrons even smirked as they watched the interaction unfold, like it was some awkward scene in a bad play. Then the manager arrived. He looked at the veteran as if he were a problem, an inconvenience. "Sir, we reserve the right to deny service if we feel our environment is being compromised." That word "compromised" hit Clint hard. He saw the old man's jaw tighten, his eyes sink. Not with anger, but humiliation. You could tell this wasn't the first time someone had tried to shrink him with words. What no one else noticed, but Clint did, was the faint outline of a purple heart pin stitched to the man's lapel. His jacket might have been old, but it told a story of sacrifice, of dignity. And yet, here he was, being made to feel like less than human in front of a crowd. The elderly veteran stepped back, clearly ready to turn and leave. No fight left in him. That was the moment Clint Eastwood slowly stood up from his corner table, and the whole room froze. Clint Eastwood didn't just walk toward the scene. He commanded it. Every step he took silenced the quiet whispers, the murmuring judgments. His presence was undeniable, like a storm front moving in. Eyes widened, forks froze mid-air, and someone near the bar audibly gasped as they recognized him. But Clint wasn't there to be recognized. He was there because something inside him had snapped. The elderly veteran, still unaware of who was approaching, adjusted his jacket as if to make himself smaller. Clint saw the man's hand instinctively brush the lapel, just where that old, worn-out purple heartpin glinted under the chandeliers. That tiny gesture said more than words ever could. Clint reached him and placed a hand gently on the veteran's shoulder. "Sir," he said in that unmistakable gravelly voice, "you earned your place in this restaurant a long time ago." The veteran turned, eyes meeting Clint's with surprise and confusion. "Mr. Eastwood?" he asked. Clint gave him a soft nod, then turned his gaze on the manager. That calm fury settled in just like it had in every Dirty Harry scene. But this time it wasn't scripted. "This was real. You ever serve?" Clint asked the manager. The man looked flustered. "Excuse me? You ever eat cold food in a foxhole? Watch your friends not make it back? Carry the weight of that for the rest of your life?" "No, sir." "I haven't." The manager stnmered. Clint nodded. "Then maybe you ought to think twice before disrespecting the kind of man who did." The room remained hushed. Not one person moved. Even the servers had stopped in their tracks, holding plates of overpriced steak and wine. Clint looked at the GN. "Hostess, get this man a table, the best one you've got. And if you still have a problem with that," he leaned in just a little, locking eyes with the manager, "I'll buy the damn place and fire you myself." There was a beat. Then a wave of quiet applause started from a nearby booth and spread. One by one, people stood. Not for Clint, but for the veteran. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Others simply nodded in reverent silence. Clint stepped back, allowing the moment to belong to the man who truly deserved it. The veteran, now seated at the finest table in the restaurant, still looked like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. A linen napkin had been carefully draped across his lap, and a glass of aged whiskey on the house rested at his table. The manager, now pale and visibly shaken, stood at a respectful distance, no longer making eye contact. Clint Eastwood stood behind the man like a guardian sentinel, arms folded across his chest, scanning the room to make sure no one else had anything left to say. The message was loud and clear. This man matters, but the real moment, the one that struck everyone to the core, came not from Clint, but from the veteran himself. With trembling hands, the old man raised his glass and slowly stood up. His voice wasn't strong, but every word carried the weight of decades. "I was 17 when I shipped off to Korea," he began, eyes flicking around the room. "Came back with a limp and a flag no one saluted. My friends didn't make it. I did, and for most of my life I felt like that wasn't fair." The room was so silent you could hear the ticking of a nearby watch. "I never expected special treatment. I never even asked for a thank you, but I never thought I'd be humiliated for simply existing either. He turned and looked at Clint, his eyes glistening. I didn't expect a movie star to be the one to remind me that I'm not invisible. Clint's jaw clenched just slightly, a flicker of emotion crossing his face. He stepped forward, leaned in, and shook the veteran's hand with both of his own. "You're not invisible," Clint said. "Not on my watch." The entire restaurant erupted not in wild applause, but in something deeper. People stood, many placing their hands over their hearts. A couple nearby veterans offered crisp, silent salutes. Even the waitstaff, who moments earlier had been afraid to move, stood straighter, prouder, transformed. It wasn't just a moment of confrontation. It became a moment of recognition, a reminder of who we owe and why. And Clint? He didn't say another word. He simply walked back to his own table, sat down, and quietly picked up his coffee. But the room was different now. Everyone was. The atmosphere in the restaurant had completely transformed. What started as just another upscale brunch for some had turned into a moment none of them would forget, a moment where dignity, respect, and humanity were put front and center, not just talked about, but acted on. And at the center of it all was Clint Eastwood, not as a celebrity, but as a man who still understood right from wrong. The elderly veteran finished his meal in peace, surrounded by quiet nods and respectful glances. For once, people didn't see a frail old man. They saw a hero, someone who had carried the weight of freedom on his shoulders long before most of them were born. And they saw a Hollywood legend stand up when no one else did. It wasn't about fame or cameras or press. There were no publicists, no flashing lights, no rehearsals. It was raw. It was real, and it reminded everyone that no matter how glamorous the setting, kindness is still the most powerful gesture in the room. Clint's actions didn't just stop the contest. Humiliation, they ignited awareness. The restaurant soon put up a new policy honoring veterans with discounts and priority seating. The story went viral after a nearby diner posted about it online. But even if it hadn't, those who witnessed it would carry that moment for life. Clint Eastwood had lived a life full of battles on screen and off, but this quiet stand in a high-end restaurant for a forgotten veteran might have been one of his most powerful. It was a reminder that respect isn't a favor, it's a right. And sometimes it takes just one person to change the entire room. By standing up when it matters most. What would you have done in that moment? Have you ever witnessed someone being disrespected in public, especially someone who deserved more honor than they received? Stories like this remind us that even in a world moving fast, with heads down and hearts distracted, there are still people like Clint Eastwood willing to pause and take a stand when it counts. It's not about being a celebrity. It's about being human. If this story moved you, take a second to drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever seen someone stand up for a stranger? Do you believe veterans are treated fairly in our society? Also, if you're passionate about stories that restore your faith in humanity, check out our next video. Keanu Reeves buys groceries for a homeless man, then follows him into the alley. Trust us, it's another story you won't forget. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a real story with real heart. Because sometimes the quietest moments create the loudest echoes.